that's the world we live in.
Yeah.
So Apple actually is the consumer-facing common standard in healthcare at this point in time because of that early adoption, and we need that a bit more. So like that's getting back to the point. NIST exists, National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have an AI acceleration and innovation center. They're having some listening sessions. I've applied. I don't know if I'm going to be accepted, but I've applied to offer some words for them to listen to. And once NIST puts rules into place, once NIST has a framework, then you can have public-private partnerships that can build on that. So, and I'll go back to HIPAA now. Okay, so HIPAA, I cannot go to the government and get HIPAA certified. So they don't have an entity that gives me like a HIPAA stamp like that. I will be prosecuted if I violate it, potentially, by the Office of Civil Rights, at that point in time. But so how do I prove that I am compliant with HIPAA as a vendor? I go and since I'm cloud-based, I get something called a SOC 2 Type 2 report. And SOC 2 Type 2 points back to ISO standards as well as NIST standards at this point, because they're reconciled between the two at this point. So like, and by the way, like SOC 2 Type 2 is, I'm going to get the name of the group wrong, but it's like the International or the American Academy of Accountants or something like that. Like it's an accounting standard. It's not a healthcare standard. It's an accounting standard. So, like all this stuff, again, builds, like, let's not reinvent the wheel. So when I look at regulation, NIST they have an AI risk management framework. Great. Let's put together an AI governance framework. And then you get the certification from whatever third party it is that's out there. There's like, Coalition for Health AI has done some stuff, Health AI Partnership, DIME, like there's a lot of URAC on the, accreditation side. Like there's all these specialty groups that could align with these federal standards and say, Rad AI has done a great job of doing this. So take our word for it, don't take their word for it. And, that is kind of the best world in my mind, where you have like good federal guidance. You have a law in place that says you have to meet these standards that generally aligns with that. And then you get certification, not from the government like you do with high tech, but from, a public entity that's, like Deloitte, McKinsey, one of those types of things. They're doing these assessments.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So part of it is a lot of the right things are in place, but I guess the issues in the execution, the enforcement, and so many, it is iterative and it's not consistent.
Well, there's no clear guideline today when it comes to, like, let's take AI transparency as an example. That HTI 1 update, that built on the Cures Act, it only applied to EMRs because it was built in on the scope of high tech. And then, like, I was working at ADOC at that point in time, so we were FDA cleared. There was a lot of overlap between the two. So, merged our, FDA summaries that get publicly posted with like a model card type definition. And that was one of the work groups I worked on at the Coalition for Health AI, specifically around that subject, so that when I would get the question from some health system that's trying to adopt AI and not get in trouble, I could say, well, this thing that applies EMR does not apply to us because we're not an EMR, but we already comply with it anyway. So here's our transparency information. Here's our results, and give them a more consistent method of adoption. Now, how exactly we get that scope? Again, this is where I think market pressures are going to determine that more than legislation will. Like, we need good guidance and loose hand framework of like, don't kill people, and here's maybe, I really like the idea of sandboxes. Senator Cruz has a sandbox act that he proposed. Much of the state AI regulation has, Senators Utah, Colorado, Texas, others offer sandboxes where you can kind of test things in a known way with like health system and vendor working together to say, we're going to try this out, let patients know, and make sure that it actually works with close monitoring before you just throw it out in the wild. So, things like that. There's a lot of work and I think opportunities there.